Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Thank you all for tuning in to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Josef Stetter. I am your resume whisperer and corporate culturist. My wonderful co-host, Dr. Jacalyn, is unfortunately a little bit under the weather today, so I'll be going solo today. So I want to thank everybody for logging in and taking the time to listen. And I hope that what I say will help you in landing your dream job now. So a little bit about me for those of you who don't know who I am. I've switched careers 9 times and jobs over 18 times because I didn't know what I want to do when I grew up. In addition to that, I've worked in recruiting for nearly 20 years. I've been a generalist in recruiting for companies like Deloitte & Touche, Apotex Pharmaceuticals, Tata Consulting Services, and many more small to global companies. And as part of becoming a resume whisperer, I've written 10 books on the subject matter, and I've had the honor and the pleasure of helping over 11,000 people land their dream job in as little as 2 days. So today I'm going to talk to you about what's going on in the job market right now and why so many people are struggling to get notice to get hired. So right now, as it stands, there are approximately 50 million people in North America that are unemployed. There's approximately 50 million people that are severely underemployed, meaning have a university or college degree, but work at places like McDonald's. And then there's approximately 30 million people going through some sort of education or retraining. So in case you didn't catch my numbers, that's about 130 million people that are displaced or trying to enter the job market, which means that when you are applying for jobs, we have become technology dependent. And by default, most of us have become lazier, and all we do is apply online through Indeed. Indeed gets an average of 350 to 5,000 resumes for one job posting. Most companies today will probably look at the first 100, figuring that there's probably a few good candidates from that batch. So if you're 101, nobody sees you. Now, before I get into the tricks of beating the job board, there's something even more important that I don't think enough people appreciate or understand the need for, which is a resume that actually highlights how good you are and a LinkedIn profile that does the same. As a recruiter, for example, right now I'm searching for great people in compliance and risk in the banking world. You have no idea, and when I say no idea, I've gone through over 1,000 resumes and LinkedIn profiles predominantly, where I'd say that close to 700 profiles had the name of the person, the name of the company that they work for, their job title, and years of work, with no details. Let me repeat that. No details on their LinkedIn profile to tell me what exactly they do or what specific initiatives they've handled. If you think that I, as a recruiter, have the time to reach out to 700 people that have a very basic, minimal profile on LinkedIn to offer them great opportunities, with salaries that might be $250,000, you are severely mistaken. Most recruiters, when they get a new job, will spend a few hours searching through the resume data bank. And then, like most job seekers, they will ask for a daily email with new profiles. So, since this is also being live streamed on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool. More and more companies are looking at your LinkedIn profile before making the decision to reach out to you or reaching out to you through your LinkedIn profile, because that's where they gather information. So if your LinkedIn profile has no information, you're going to have a very hard time finding a job. If your LinkedIn profile, just like your resume, is extremely generic and you just give me fluffy words. What do I mean by fluffy words? I'm talking about subjective words. Hardworking, dedicated, committed, team player, excellent communication skills, interpersonal skills. Has anybody ever measured those? How do you quantify hardworking, right? So if I were to compare an accountant that works during tax season, that has to work 80 hours by mandate, what's hardworking for an accountant? 100? And I compare that to a nurse that at the height of the pandemic was doing 4 hours of overtime because the other nurses didn't arrive or there was so much work to be done. So is the nurse that's only working 4 hours of overtime less hardworking than the accountant? Absolutely not. There's a different level of stress. There's a different level of need. So every industry and every company has its own definition. Let's use another one. Excellent communication skills. This has got to be the most loaded skill ever put on a job description and in use for the past, 40 years. Because I can assure you that I've met plenty of people that do not have excellent communication skills, but get a job. Okay. If I compare myself to some of the people that I read and follow and admire, such as Les Brown has made millions, if not tens of millions, if not more, as a motivational speaker. Compared to Les Brown, who has made a career as a motivational speaker, I don't have excellent communication skills because I haven't reached his level of income or recognition yet. But I teach communication. I've done Toastmasters, which teaches you the art of public speaking to avoid filler words like and like, but, yeah, and several others. I'll never forget when I first got into recruiting, I had an individual that was of Chinese background, relatively new to Canada, came in looking for a bookkeeping position. I asked him, what do you love most about being in accounting? He looked at me and went, accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciliation. I went, okay, great. What do you like the least about accounting? Accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciliation. Okay. What's the easiest part about accounting? Accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciliation. What's the hardest part about accounting? Accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciliation. He had memorized those 3 words. I stopped the interview and said to him, listen, unless you're planning on working for a Chinese employer, you don't understand basic English. Nobody will hire you. Go to study English, come back to me. He came back to me 6 months later and said, you were the only recruiter that was honest with me, that was transparent and told me why nobody's hiring me. I studied English. Can you test me? 2 weeks later, I placed him at a great job that paid a lot more than he expected because his English skills were there. Now, many people, and I share this story because when you're applying for a job, a lot of people have this idea that when you get the interview, you can start talking about the amazing things that you've done, the results that you've produced, the significance of your work, the meaning or importance of the work that you've done. But if you're not getting an interview, you're doing yourself a disservice. It should not take you hundreds of resumes in 6 months to a year to land a job. If that is the case, your resume is not serving you. Your LinkedIn profile is not serving you. Stop being generic. Stop telling me the same information that everyone else is doing. Okay? If you are an engineer and you tell me that you know how to do, let's say, calculations of, or physics calculations, again, I'm not an engineer, but I've never met an engineer that does not know how to do physics calculations. And if they are an engineer that does not do physics calculation, how did they get hired? Because it's part of the job. So stop regurgitating, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. I have experience with that. Nobody, and I mean nobody, cares that you know it. Show potential employers what you've done with results. What is, in sales. To tell me, to say I've worked in sales, like in my career, I've worked in sales in retail, I've done door-to-door sales, I've done, you know, um, car sales, I've done private education, I've worked in recruiting, I've done B2B sales, B2C sales, account management, relationship building, lead generation. Yes, those are all words as jargon that you need to put on your resume in order to score on all the applicant tracking systems algorithm, because those are words related to sales. However, if all you've told me is these words, I will never hire you for a salesperson because you haven't proven to me that you actually know how to sell. When you start sharing examples, people believe you. In my case, I worked for a private college that before I came in generated $530,000 in sales for the entire year. In 1 month, I generated $860,000 in sales for them. Now, think about what I just said. Which would convince you that I know how to do sales? All of the words, such as account management, B2B, B2C, or proof, results? Yes, proof, results. That's what people care about. That's what makes a difference. Now, for some of you, it might be very hard to think about what are the results. If you're lucky enough to be in a relationship, when you come home and you tell your partner about your job, sure, there'll be days where you're like, oh, today was just another day. But those moments when you come home and say, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened to me today. There was this huge problem at work, and I spent the entire day coming up with solutions. And then I had the most brilliant idea I've probably had in a long time. I was able to do A, B, and C. And by doing A, B, and C, we can actually automate the process. We're going to save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, and everyone is looking at me as the hero. Those are the things that you need to say on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, because you have to understand, even if you've been in the same industry for 20 plus years, from one employer to the next, there's different standards, there's different expectations. And unless you are very well known in your industry, your competitors or the competitors of the company that you're currently working for don't really know what kind of work you do and why. You need to explain it to them. Don't assume that just because you work for a competitor, by default, they trust you or they like you or they know that you can do their job. No, not at all. Okay. You need to take responsibility. And even if you send your resume and you were blessed enough to be called for an interview, okay, don't assume they read your resume, right? Most employers today spend 8 to 30 seconds reading your resume, which means they look at the top third to the top half of your resume. If something catches their attention, they'll put you in the yes pile. If not, they'll put you in the no pile. So when I was working in finance, I worked for Fidelity Investments and 9/11 happened. I was downsized from Fidelity Investments And I went to one of their competitors, formerly AIM Trimark, now known as Invesco. And the HR person is looking at me and saying to me, Joseph, it's great that you have all this background knowledge on mutual funds. You understand the regulations, you understand how to change the transactions, you understand how to correct things and process everything. But have you ever worked in a call center? I paused for a second. I looked her straight in the eyes. I said, if you flip to page 2 of my resume, I worked in your call center for 6 months. Oh, yeah, there it is. So I've experienced this. Don't assume they read your resume. They haven't. More than likely, unless you're extremely specialized, um, let's say in pharmaceuticals or something that, it's very rare to find someone like you, assume that 2 minutes before interviewing you, they scanned your resume quickly to have some idea of what questions to ask you. So it is your responsibility to be the announcer of your career, to explain the highlight reel, to kind of show them the results that you've produced in the past and that you can produce better for them. So I'm going to take the glass off because they're also reflecting a little bit for me. But you need to be responsible to show why you're better than everybody else, why they need to hire you. Okay? Those of you who are lucky enough to be married, the majority of people in North America don't practice polygamy. So you have one partner. You probably have dated before the person you're married to, but something along the way was not the right fit. Whether the communication, whether where you were in life was at different places, what you desired out of the relationship was different. Job finding is no different. You might be the most educated person, but education doesn't necessarily mean getting hired. My father, before he passed away, was a senior director of operations in a construction company. And he needed to hire project managers, and he got resumes of people that had PhDs in construction, but they never left academia. And he was like, it's great that they know the theory, but if they've never worked on site, they've never negotiated with the skilled trades, they're useless to me, because I don't need someone that knows the theory. I need someone that can produce results and can handle building or the construction of 1 or 2 buildings simultaneously. So just because you're educated doesn't mean you're better. And I get this question a lot. Are designations more important than experience? No. If you have over 5 years of experience, very rarely do people look at your education or care what education you have. If you don't have experience, you're a new university graduate, then your education is important. Obviously, if you've got education from some of the top schools in the world, like Harvard, Yale, MIT, Columbia, then your education makes a huge difference in getting you that first interview. But again, being educated doesn't necessarily mean the best. There are people in my life, like the guy that fixes my computers and does all my tech work. He doesn't have the latest designations to fix computers. But every time I have a problem, he figures out how to solve it. So I don't care whether or not he has designation. I trust the quality of his work. Okay, let me repeat that. When you're good at what you do, okay, companies will come to you. People like me, corporate culturists that also do headhunting, will message you to try and convince you to leave your current employer for whoever my client is and offer you better opportunities. Okay, so make sure that you take the time to demonstrate how great you are, because when you do, that's when people respond to you. Okay, I've had the opportunity to help over 11,000 people land their dream job. I remember when I was first kind of starting in the field, or still kind of a new resume whisperer, I'm an avid salsa dancer, and I've been dancing and performing, competing for about 15 years. And when I first started dancing, I had a dance partner that was in college studying graphic design. And she called me and told me that there was this internship opportunity that she really, really, really wanted. She was like, I'll do anything, just I really, really want it. So, I mean, obviously, I like to goof around a little bit as my personality. So I was like, you really, really want it? She's like, yeah, I'll do anything. Look, okay, I'm going to be like your Mr. Miyagi for those of you who have watched The Karate Kid, right? Wax on, wax off. You do everything I tell you, don't question anything. First thing is, you're applying to be a graphic designer. You're not allowed to have a black and white cookie cutter resume that uses Times New Roman as a font or Arial or Calibri because they're the default fonts on every resume, that uses the black dots or circles, whatever you want to call them, or hyphens as your bullet point because your careers class in high school or your EI center told you to do that. That had told you to do a chronological resume, that told you to have a section with, career history or kind of, right skills like I'm hardworking, dedicated, committed, and team player. I can assure you in 20 years of recruiting, not once have I ever looked for a resume that had those words, because I'll ask how you can demonstrate those words, and I really don't care if you're right about them. And again, the results. So because, and for those of you who saw the movie Legally Blonde, when Reese Witherspoon or Elle Woods applies to Harvard and then to the internship from her law class, she gives a pink scented resume. And everyone looks and goes, it's pink and it's scented. But they remember it. Now, if you notice, I'm wearing a purple shirt. My background is purple. When I go to networking events, I was at an event where there was 36,000 people. I had a purple shirt. I had a purple bag. I used a purple pen. So when I sent emails to companies, even if they didn't remember my name, I was the guy in purple. It's branding for those of you who are in the marketing field. Okay. It's brand recognition because they associate purple to me. So make your resume a little bit unique, add some color, change the font, change your bullets. And again, you don't need to be a graphic designer for this. You can just go to insert bullet and change it to a diamond or an arrow. So anyways, back to my story about graphic design. Sorry, I digress. We made my salsa partner's resume green with she had a little kind of dancing character that we used as her bullet points. And she was working as a barista at a coffee shop. And we made that graphic design because she decorated the lattes. She sent the resume in. 2 weeks go by. She calls me. She goes, they didn't even call me. You suck. An hour later, they called her. The director personally called her and said, listen, we are so sorry we didn't call you sooner. We received 7,400 applications for 20 unpaid internships. To be honest with you, your resume was one of our favorites. And because we received so many applicants, we're going to do a 3-interview process. Your first interview is going to be in 2 days. She called me back. She's like, oh my God, they called me. What do I do? I looked at her and I went, first of all, apologize to me. Right? Then I taught her my 7 rules to a perfect interview or a wow interview. I instructed her to go to Kinko's or FedEx or Staples and print her best digital work on the highest quality glossy paper so that she could show them to the people. I told her to organize all her digital files in one easy, accessible area so that she doesn't have to scramble to find the work. She came to the interview 2 days later, 15 minutes into her first interview. The director put down his pen, looked at her and said, in 10 years of running this program, I have never been so impressed with a candidate as I am with you. Congratulations, you are my first hire. I'm not even bothering with the second and third interview. And so she was one of my first success stories of getting people their dream job in as little as 2 days. Again, I made the resume stand out. I emphasized results that she produced. Okay. I taught her how to interview correctly. Okay. Many today, again, I mentioned at the beginning of this show, there's approximately 150 million people that need help finding a job. The competition is intense. And because we've become more dependent on technology, the opportunity to present yourself seem to be harder and harder. They're not. You just need to know the tricks. So one of the tricks that you must do, and many of people, we become so lazy that we never do it. And Napoleon Hill talked about it in his book, Think and Grow Rich. Be proactive. Now, you can call HR and say, listen, my battery just died just as I was pressing submit. Can you please check if my resume went through or my application went through? Or my internet's been wonky all day. And just as I was pressing send, it was disconnected. Can you please check that everything went through? Or I never got a confirmation. Can you please check that my application went through? So if you were the 101st candidate applying for a job, as I said earlier, companies look at the first 100. You're 101st, no one's looking at you. When you call for them to check, guess what? You're now first on the list. Now you have HR on the phone. You have 2 minutes to give them your elevator pitch. Give them one of your best highlights. Tell them the results that you produced and how they relate to the job that they're hiring for. So that you plant that seed of, maybe you want to talk to you. Maybe you want to take a closer look at your resume. Now, after you've planted that seed, ask them, when are they starting to hire or interview for this role? And let's just say that they're interviewing in a week. Ask permission that if you don't hear from them in a week, to call back to get feedback on your resume on what was missing or what could be added or what could be different to increase your chances next time. Now, the reason you want to do this is twofold. Number one, you're getting them to be an expert that's going to help you get hired because they're going to tell you the resumes that they want to see. Number two, if indeed they were looking at the first 100 and they didn't pick anybody or they didn't like the people from the first batch, when you are proactive and follow up, you're on their radar again, and they might reconsider your application because you did something no one else did. You took action. Okay. One of my friends graduated from mechanical engineering, and he sent out about 100 resumes, got no response because there's a catch-22 that he just graduated from mechanical engineering, and most of the entry-level jobs that he was applying for were asking for 3 to 5 years of experience, which he did not have. So he printed about 25 copies of his resume and then chose 25 companies that he wanted to target. And he went to the first one, showed up at 9 a.m. and said, I would like to speak to the director of engineering. The receptionist looked at him and said, do you have an appointment? And he said, no. Receptionist looked at him and said, well, he's in meetings all day. And he said, okay, I'll wait. And he sat there and he waited till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the director finally popped his head out and said, I understand you've been waiting for me. How can I help you? And my friend looked at him and said, listen, I just graduated from mechanical engineering. Here's some of the projects I've done. Here's kind of what I was measuring for, what I was testing for. I know you're not hiring, but I wanted to introduce myself personally to you. The director was so impressed that he was willing to spend the entire day waiting for him, that he had a 5-minute conversation with my friend and offered him a job that was not posted anywhere. Let me repeat what I just said. was offered a job that was not posted. And the only reason my friend got that job is because he did what no other engineer did. He took action to be proactive and go in person. By default, most even retailers will reject you by saying, "Did you apply online?" And if the answer is no, go apply online first. They won't talk to you. So you want to be smarter than them. Apply online first, then go there. Because now they can't whisk you away or tell you, shoo you away is the correct word. Okay? But be different. Stand out, right? Your resume was what gets your foot in the door, or more importantly, your LinkedIn. Because I can tell you, as a headhunter, as a recruiter, I don't post jobs anymore. Why? Because I've learned that people don't read the job description. The last job posting I posted, I needed a Python React developer. I posted this big, like the size of my head on the screen right now, almost, in red, in bold, highlighted, must have 5 years of Python and React experience. And then the rest of the job description was normal size, normal font. I got 150 resumes from people saying, "I'm graduating from college or university in 2023. I have 3 months of Python experience. Can my first job be $150,000?" Now, don't get me wrong. I love people that are proactive. But when somebody puts in red, bolded, highlighted, size 40 font, must have 5 years of experience. Look, I don't care if you haven't worked for 5 years. If you've been programming on your own for 5 years and you can show me some of the projects that you've done as passion projects or interest projects in the background, in their very high caliber coding, I will be happy to speak to you. But when you send me resumes with barely 3 months of Python, when I've overemphasized, you must have 5 years, you're wasting my time. Okay? I'm getting resumes for jobs that I posted 6 years ago on Indeed, because the people that are applying aren't even looking at the date that it was posted, aren't looking at when was the last time the job posting was refreshed. They're just desperate for a job. They're just applying for anything. And I had a few people that were a little bit more proactive that figured out what my phone number is and called me. And then when I told them this job was from 6 years ago and Indeed never removed it, they were like, "Oh." But then they at least started the conversation to ask if I have other opportunities, if I can connect them with anybody, which I admire and respect. And when that happens, I usually go out of my way to help them, even if I don't have anything that's active myself right now. But again, make sure that you're paying attention. Now, stop trying to, and I'm going to say this because I know I have about 5 minutes and I want to emphasize this. When you hear experts that tell you that you need to customize your resume for every job, let me be very controversial and say they don't know what they're talking about. If you emphasize the results you produce on your resume, you do not need to customize your resume. You need to just maybe change the job title of the position you're applying to, but the information will be the same. Unless you're switching industry or switching direction, you do not need to, I repeat, you do not need to customize your resume. You need to emphasize how great you are by giving me results. Give me dollar figures, percentage figures, time figures, inventories, macros, templates, policies, procedures, special initiatives that you personally spearheaded. Tell me what the results were. Okay. Tell me why this is important or why the company cares about it. Because when you do that correctly, you will have headhunters like me calling you saying, "I've got the greatest opportunity for you." Companies will chase you. If you're sending out hundreds, if not thousands of resumes, if you have been looking for work for 6 months, something you're doing is wrong. If you hired a resume expert and you're still not getting results, you hired the wrong expert. Do your due diligence, because there's a lot of people that proclaim that they're experts. I dated somebody that after we broke up, she decided that she wants to do resume writing. She was working part-time at Walmart. She was charging $100 to $150 to write a resume because in her mind it was easy. Yeah, I'll go on Google, find a few words, and boom, and there's a resume. Now, thanks to AI such as ChatGPT that most of the world is talking about, ChatGPT can write you some better looking resume than most of you have. But again, ChatGPT follows the formula of what everyone else is doing. The standard generic, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, I have experience with that. Fantastic. But ChatGPT does not tell me your stories, your experiences, your successes, your results. You do. So you need to take what ChatGPT gives you, if that's the way you go, and add the sauce, add the spice, add the here's why you need to hire me. Okay? Because again, I'm looking for people that produce results. I'm looking for people that give me more information than, if you're an accountant and you tell me that you know how to do financial statements, such as balance sheets and income statement, I have yet to meet one accountant that doesn't. And if they're working as an accountant and they don't know financial statements, they're definitely an accountant I do not want to use, right? So make yourself different. Be better than everybody else. And when I say be better, do you. Because there's an adage that says when you point a finger at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. Take ownership and responsibility for the work that you do. Whether you impacted it by 2% or you impacted it by 40% doesn't matter. It's the fact that there's a result, because some companies have great things happening. If you work for Google, improving the coding in Google might be very, very hard. But building add-ons to Google that can allow for different variations of what's being done is huge. And so highlight to people why you, why different, why better. Okay. Make sure that when you're speaking to career coaches, resume writers, you ask them questions like how many people they've helped, what is their success rate, how quickly do the people get hired, right? What is the process they use to highlight how good you are? Can they show you samples of work? Is there testimonials of people that they've worked for? Because unfortunately, we've become a society where everybody's an expert. If you go on YouTube right now and type in cockroach whisperer, you will find videos of experts that will talk to cockroaches and tell them to leave your apartment. Okay? You can find experts for cooking green tomatoes. You can find an expert for everything. So do a little bit of homework to make sure it's the right expert for you. If you are culturally diverse and you prefer to work with somebody from your culture, more power to you. If you prefer to work with a woman because you are or identify as a woman, more power to you. But find the right people for you. I hope this episode helps you in your job search. And I'm going to thank all the listeners and all the viewers for tuning in to USA Global TV and Radio and taking the time to better themselves. For those of you who need to reach me, my name is Josef Stetter. You can find me on most social media. With that name, I am on LinkedIn, extremely active. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. I am the Resume Whisperer. And I hope this message helps you land your dream job.